I asked my fiancée for a prenup to protect my savings, but she got upset, saying we weren't rich enough for that. Then, after learning about my wealth, she started hinting I should pay off her student loans. All right, I've got your script. Here's a revised version, aiming for fresh wording and maintaining the original length, without using any bold text. Then, she began suggesting I settle her student loans once I mentioned my financial standing. I'm 29, she's 26. We've been a couple for 3 years and engaged for half a year. I proposed in December, and everything was fine until last week when I brought up the idea of a prenuptial agreement. Now I'm left wondering if I'm mistaken or if I'm finally seeing things clearly. So, here's what transpired, and I'm still trying to process it, as I truly believe this would be a simple discussion between two adults preparing for marriage. I work in technology, earning about $85,000, while she's a teacher, making around $45,000. We both have student debt, but mine is nearly resolved. I've been setting aside funds since I was about 22, as my father always stressed early investment and retirement planning. She typically spends most of her monthly income on clothing and social outings, which is perfectly acceptable. We don't combine finances yet. However, I've been putting away about $1,500 each month for the last 7 years, accumulating a substantial sum, alongside some very successful stock investments. Last Tuesday, during dinner at home, I raised the topic of a prenup, thinking it was a conversation we should have before seriously continuing with wedding preparations. I casually mentioned, "Hey, I think we should probably get a prenup, just to safeguard both of us and ensure clarity if anything ever happens." Not that I expect it, but, better safe than sorry. She literally chuckled and replied, "We're not wealthy enough for that. Prenups are for millionaires and celebrities. Ordinary people like us don't require them." I tried to explain that it's not solely about being rich. It's about safeguarding what each of us brings into the marriage and ensuring both parties are protected. That's when her expression shifted, and she inquired what exactly I felt the need to protect from her. I disclosed my savings and investments, explaining how I'd built them over years and wished for them to remain separate property. She simply stared for about 10 seconds before becoming agitated. She claimed I was essentially conveying a lack of trust and that I was already contemplating divorce before we even tied the knot. She questioned why I would want to keep money from her when we're meant to be a unit. I attempted to clarify that it works both ways. The prenup would also shield her assets and future earnings. Yet, she insisted she had nothing to protect and asked why I was being so secretive about money when we're supposed to be partners. That's when I realized she had no idea the extent of my savings. I suppose I never went into detail because money discussions feel awkward, and I didn't want to appear boastful. So, I revealed the actual figures, and her entire demeanor transformed. Her upset vanished, replaced by an expression I hadn't witnessed before, and she asked why I had never disclosed such an amount. I said it never came up, and I wasn't deliberately concealing it. I just don't often discuss money. She became very quiet for a moment before stating that this changes things, and perhaps we should consider consolidating our finances after marriage to accelerate her student loan repayment and begin building a life together. I responded that this is precisely why I desired a prenup, so we could properly decide how to manage financial matters instead of just assuming. She grew angry again, accusing me of being selfish and strange about money. The conversation intensified, and she started uttering remarks like, "I must think she's some kind of gold digger if I need a legal document to protect myself from her." I countered, "That's not what I think at all, but prenups are normal and sensible, and many people get them." She retorted, "Not people like us, people who genuinely love and trust each other." I asserted, "Love and trust have nothing to do with being practical about legal and financial matters." We continued this back and forth for about an hour. She repeatedly claimed I was ruining everything, being paranoid, and treating her like a stranger I couldn't trust with my money. I kept trying to explain it wasn't about trust. It was about being sensible and protecting both of us, and she could request whatever she wanted in the prenup too. However, she only grew more distressed, saying that the mere fact I wanted one meant I didn't truly want to marry her. Finally, she declared she needed time to think and left for her sister's place that night. When she returned the next day, she said she had spoken with her sister and mother, and they all believed I was being ridiculous and hurtful. Her sister apparently stated that requesting a prenup is essentially telling your fiancé you think she's a gold digger and don't trust her. Her mother remarked that when you truly love someone, you don't require legal protection from them. I informed her that her family didn't grasp the situation and were offering poor advice, which set her off again. She claimed I was calling her mom and sister stupid and that I thought I was superior to them because I had savings. I explained that wasn't my intent at all. I simply meant they didn't understand that prenups are normal and beneficial for everyone involved. But she insisted they understood perfectly well and that I was the one being odd and suspicious. We've been arguing about this for a week now. She's been staying at her sister's most nights, only coming home to retrieve clothes and belongings. Yesterday, she messaged me, saying she'd consider signing a prenup if I agreed to pay off her student loans after we marry and put her name on the house I plan to purchase next year. I replied that this defeats the entire purpose of a prenup, and she responded, "That's my answer. Take it or leave it." I don't even know what to think anymore, because this whole situation has revealed a side of her I've never witnessed. I'm beginning to wonder if she's more interested in my money than I realized. For instance, as soon as she learned how much I'd saved, her entire demeanor shifted, and suddenly she was discussing combining finances, paying off her loans, and getting her name on property I haven't even acquired yet. I keep recalling my father, who divorced when I was in college and lost half of everything, even though my mother barely worked during their marriage and contributed little to their savings. I vowed I would never let that happen to me. I contacted my friend Steven, who married last year, and inquired if he had a prenup. He said, "Yeah, of course. It was just part of the wedding planning, and his wife was completely fine with it, because they both wanted to protect their individual assets." He even mentioned his wife suggested it first, as she had some family money she wished to keep separate, and they resolved it all with lawyers, making it no big deal. So now I'm even more confused, because Steven's situation sounds entirely normal and sensible, but my fiancée is acting as if I've asked her to sign away her firstborn child. Her sister continues to text me, saying I'm being an unpleasant person, and that I'm going to lose the best thing that ever happened to me over a silly document. Her mother called to inform me that marriage is about trust and sharing everything, and if I can't do that, then I'm not prepared for marriage. I was polite, but told her I respectfully disagreed, and that financial planning is part of being a responsible adult. I don't want to be with someone who views my savings as our money before we're even married, and I don't want to be with someone who believes wanting legal protection means I don't love her. So, am I in the wrong for insisting on a prenup, even though she's completely against it and thinks it signifies a lack of trust? Update 1: after my initial post, I decided to attempt one more calm discussion with my fiancée about the prenup. So I texted her, asking if she wanted to meet and talk things through without getting emotional or involving outside opinions. She agreed, and we met on Saturday morning. I thought we might find common ground and work things out, because despite everything, I still cared for her and wanted this to succeed. So I arrived ready to compromise, perhaps even agreeing to a simpler prenup that only covered the major points. I had even looked up some prenup examples online and printed a few to show her that they don't have to be massive, complicated documents. They can be quite straightforward and fair. But as soon as I sat down, she began speaking, and I could tell this wasn't going to go as I'd hoped. She said she had been thinking about everything and realized I was right about needing to protect our individual assets, but she wanted to ensure the prenup was fair to both of us. I thought, okay, this sounds promising. Maybe we can resolve this after all. Then she produced a piece of paper with notes and started reading what she thought should be in the prenup. She said that since I wanted to keep my savings separate, she should be able to keep her future teacher's pension separate, which I said was absolutely fine. Then she stated that since I didn't want to combine finances, we should split all household expenses exactly 50-50, including rent, groceries, and utilities. I agreed that seemed fair, but then she continued, saying that since we're keeping everything separate, if we have children, she should get primary custody in case of divorce because she'll be the one taking time off work and sacrificing her career, and I should pay child support based on my income level. She also said that if we purchase a house together, even if I provide the down payment from my savings, we should own it 50-50 because she'll be contributing to the mortgage payments. I started to feel like something was amiss because this didn't sound like she was attempting to compromise. It sounded like she was trying to gain all the benefits of keeping things separate while also accessing my money and assets. So I asked her where she got these ideas, as this didn't sound like the same person who was crying about me not trusting her a few days prior. She said she had been researching online and speaking to people about prenups, and she learned that they need to be fair to both parties, and all of her suggestions were simply ensuring she wasn't being taken advantage of. I said, okay, let's discuss each point. But when I started asking questions about the specifics, it became evident that her definition of fair was quite one-sided. For instance, with the house, I pointed out that if I'm providing the down payment for money I saved before we married, and the prenup is meant to protect premarital assets, then my down payment should remain mine, and we should only split the portion we pay together. She argued that wasn't fair because once we're married, the house becomes a marital asset, and she'll be living there and contributing to it. I said, but that's exactly what prenups are for, to keep premarital assets separate. She claimed she didn't think that was reasonable because it would give me an unfair advantage. I asked her how it's unfair for me to keep money I saved before I even met her, and she said because it puts her at a disadvantage and makes the relationship unequal. We went in circles on this for a while, and I started to realize that she doesn't actually comprehend the purpose of prenups. She thinks they're supposed to make everything perfectly equal regardless of what each person contributes to the marriage. When I tried to explain that the whole point is to protect what you each possess before the marriage, she said that was selfish and that marriage is supposed to be about combining your lives completely. So I asked her why she was suddenly okay with a prenup if she still held that belief, and she said because I was clearly not going to change my mind, and she wanted to ensure that if I was going to be selfish about money, then she needed to protect herself too. That's when I realized she wasn't trying to compromise. She was trying to seek retribution or something similar. The conversation grew tense again, and I said, look, I think we have different ideas about what a prenup should accomplish. Perhaps we should consult a lawyer together and get some professional guidance. She said she had already spoken to a lawyer, her sister's friend who practices family law, and he told her that everything she was requesting was entirely reasonable and that my version of a prenup sounded one-sided. I was surprised she had already consulted a lawyer without telling me, and I asked her when this occurred. She said she called him right after our first disagreement about the prenup because she wanted to understand her rights. So, while she was at her sister's place crying about my alleged lack of trust, she was also consulting lawyers about how to protect herself in a divorce. I pointed this out, saying it seemed she was doing exactly what she accused me of, planning for a divorce before we were even married. She argued that was different because she was only doing it in response to my desire for a prenup, and if I hadn't brought it up, she never would have considered divorce at all. But here's what truly bothered me. She kept discussing this lawyer, as if they'd had multiple conversations, and she mentioned he informed her about palimony and common law marriage and all these other things that had no bearing on our situation. When I asked her how extensively she had spoken to this lawyer, she said a few times to review her options. Something about the way she said it made me suspicious, so I asked her if this lawyer was single and if her sister was trying to set them up or something. She became very defensive and said it wasn't like that. He was just being helpful and offering free advice as a friend. But then she said he told her that most men who ask for prenups are either concealing assets or planning to be unfaithful, and that I was probably both. I said that was ridiculous and insulting, and also likely not the kind of thing a professional lawyer would say about someone he's never met. She said he was simply looking out for her and trying to ensure she wasn't taken advantage of by someone who obviously didn't respect her. At this point, I was becoming quite angry because it felt like she was trying to twist this into something it wasn't, and she was letting some random lawyer poison her against me. I stated, if she really thinks I'm hiding assets and planning to be unfaithful, then perhaps we shouldn't get married at all. And she replied, maybe we shouldn't. We just stared at each other for a minute, and I realized this was no longer about the prenup. This was about the fact that we have fundamentally different values regarding money, trust, and planning for the future. She thinks I'm selfish and paranoid, and I think she's irresponsible and opportunistic. I told her I needed to consider whether we should continue planning this wedding, and she said she was thinking the same thing. Then she stood up and left, and I just sat there, trying to comprehend how everything went so wrong so quickly. That was Saturday, and we haven't spoken since, except for a few texts about logistics. She came by the apartment yesterday to retrieve more of her belongings, and she was very distant and formal. She said she was going to stay at her sister's place until we figure out what we're doing. I've been reflecting a lot, and I keep returning to the fact that as soon as she discovered my savings, her entire attitude shifted and she started making plans for my money. Now she's talking to lawyers and making demands, acting like I'm the villain for wanting to protect myself. I'm starting to believe I dodged a bullet here, because if this is how she reacts to a reasonable request for financial protection, how will she react to other disagreements in our marriage? And if she truly believes that wanting a prenup means I don't love or trust her, then we have fundamentally different understandings of what love and trust entail. My friend Steven texted me yesterday, saying he heard from someone that my fiancé was posting about our situation on social media. So I checked her Instagram and Facebook, but I didn't see anything. Then I realized I should check if she blocked me, and she had. So I have no idea what she's saying about me online. I asked Steven, who's friends with her on Facebook, to check what she's posting. He said there was a vague post about learning people's true colors when you get engaged, but nothing specific about our situation. Still, the fact that she blocked me from her social media feels quite final. I'm supposed to be planning a wedding right now, but instead, I'm sitting here wondering if I even want to marry someone who reacts like this to a practical conversation about finances. And the more I consider it, the more I realize there were probably signs I overlooked because I was in love and didn't want to see them. Like how she always expects me to pay when we go out to dinner, even though we agreed to split expenses. Or how she talks about our future as if my money will automatically solve all her problems. I guess I thought that would change after we married and truly combined our lives. But perhaps this is simply who she is. I don't know what will happen next, but I'm definitely not planning a wedding until we sort this out. Update to goodness. This entire situation has completely fallen apart, and I can't believe what transpired over the weekend. I thought things were bad before, but now I see that everything was even worse than I realized, and I'm genuinely thankful this all came to light before the wedding. After my last update, I was still somewhat hoping we could somehow work things out, even though I was starting to have serious doubts about our compatibility. I figured maybe we both needed some time to cool down and consider what we truly wanted, and then we could have another conversation about the future. But then Friday night, I received a call from my friend Ryan, who said he had something to tell me that I wouldn't want to hear. He said he was at a downtown bar with some coworkers and saw my fiancé there with a guy he didn't recognize, and they were definitely not just having a casual friend gathering. They were sitting very close, and she was touching his arm and laughing at everything he said. I asked him if he was sure it was her, and he said, "Yeah, absolutely." And he took a picture because he thought I should know. He texted me the picture, and it was undeniably her, and she was wearing a dress I bought her for her birthday last year. She was leaning into this guy and looking at him the way she used to look at me. My first thought was that perhaps it was the lawyer she had been speaking to about the prenup, but when I examined the picture more closely, the guy appeared younger, and he was wearing scrubs, like he worked at a hospital or something. So I called Ryan back and asked him if he heard them discussing anything, and he said he couldn't hear much, but he did hear her call him Dr. something. I was trying not to jump to conclusions, because perhaps it was innocent, maybe she was just having drinks with a friend or something. But then Ryan said they left together and got into the same car. He followed them outside because he was concerned for me, and he saw them kissing in the parking lot before they drove away. I just sat there holding my phone, trying to process what he was telling me, because this was literally the last thing I anticipated. We're engaged, we're supposed to be planning a wedding. We just had this huge fight about prenups and trust, and she's out kissing some random doctor. I was so angry I could barely think straight, and my first impulse was to call her and confront her about it. But then I realized she would just deny it or fabricate some excuse, and I would never get the truth. So I decided to wait and see what she would do, whether she would tell me about it or simply pretend it never happened. Saturday, she texted me, saying she wanted to come by the apartment to get some more of her belongings, and I said fine. I would be out running errands so she could come whenever. But instead of going out, I just went to the coffee shop across the street and waited to see if anyone came with her or if she seemed different or guilty or whatever. She showed up alone around noon and was in there for about an hour. When she emerged, she looked normal, not guilty or secretive or anything. She texted me that she got her stuff and that we should talk soon about what we're doing with the wedding planning and returning deposits and all that. So I texted back and said we should definitely talk. How about dinner Sunday night? She agreed, but she wanted to meet somewhere public, not at the apartment. Sunday, I arrived early, and I was incredibly anxious because I still didn't know if I was going to confront her about the doctor or just see what she had to say about everything. She showed up 20 minutes late, and she looked different, like she had gotten her hair done, and she was wearing makeup and an outfit I had never seen before. We ordered food and made small talk for a few minutes, and then she said she had been doing a lot of thinking and realized that we want different things from life, and maybe it would be better if we took a break from planning the wedding and figured out what we truly want. I said that sounded like she wanted to break up, and she said not necessarily break up, but maybe take some time apart to consider whether we're truly compatible for marriage. She said the prenup fight showed her that we have different values about money and trust, and maybe we rushed into getting engaged. I was listening to her talk and thinking about what Ryan saw on Friday night, and I realized she was breaking up with me, but trying to make it sound mutual and reasonable. She wasn't upset or sad, so I decided to see if she would tell me the truth, and I said, "It sounds like there might be someone else involved." She got this look on her face like I had caught her doing something. She said, "No, there's no one else. She just needs time to think about what she wants." I said, "Are you sure? Because someone saw you at a bar Friday night with some guy who looked like a doctor." Her entire face changed color. She said that was just a friend, someone she met through her sister, and they were just having drinks and talking about her situation. I said talking about our situation with random strangers doesn't seem like something you would do. And what kind of friend kisses you in parking lots? She got defensive and said whoever saw her was mistaken about what they witnessed. She didn't kiss anyone. They were just talking. But I could tell she was lying because she couldn't look at me and she kept touching her hair the way she does when she's nervous. So I said, "Okay, if he's just a friend, then you won't mind telling me his name and how you met him." She said, "His name was Todd, and she met him near the hospital where he works." I said, "When did you meet him?" She said, "A couple weeks ago, right around the time we started fighting about the prenup." So while she was staying at her sister's place and crying about my alleged lack of trust, she was also meeting new guys. I asked her if Todd knew she was engaged and planning a wedding, and she said yes, but he understood that she was going through a difficult time and he was just being supportive. I said most people would call that emotional cheating at minimum, and she said I was being paranoid and controlling and trying to make her feel guilty for having friends. We started arguing right there in the restaurant, and she said I was proving her point about being controlling and not trusting her. I said I was proving my point about needing a prenup because clearly I can't trust her. She said that was a terrible thing to say, and if that's how I truly feel, then we should definitely not get married. I said, "Fine, let's not get married." And she said, "Fine, I'll send you a list of the vendors we need to cancel, and you can figure out how to split the costs." Then she stood up and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting there with 2 dinners and the bill. I paid and drove home, and just sat in my apartment thinking about how everything had gone so wrong so fast. 3 weeks ago, I was planning a wedding, and now I'm apparently single, and my ex-fiancé is dating a doctor she met. Monday morning, she texted me a spreadsheet of all our wedding expenses and vendor contacts, with notes about which deposits were refundable and which weren't. It was like the most organized and efficient breakup document I've ever seen, which made me think she had been planning this for a while. I texted back and said I would handle canceling everything, and she didn't need to worry about the costs. I would just absorb the deposits because I wanted this to be over cleanly. She said that was generous and she appreciated it. And then she said she would come by this week to get the rest of her stuff when I wasn't there. That was it. 3 years of relationship and 6 months of engagement ended with a text about picking up her belongings. No conversation about what went wrong or whether we could fix things. No sadness or regret. I called my dad Tuesday night and told him everything that happened. He said he was sorry it ended this way, but he thought I handled it correctly and was proud of me for standing firm on the prenup. He said, "Better to discover who she truly is now than after the wedding, when it would be much more complicated and expensive." My friend Steven came over Wednesday night with beer, and we canceled all the wedding vendors together. I lost about $3,000 in deposits, but honestly, it feels like the best money I ever spent because it revealed the kind of person I was about to marry. Steven said his wife wanted to know if I was doing okay and if I needed anything. And I said I was actually doing better than I expected. I thought I would be devastated, but mostly I just feel relieved that I don't have to pretend this relationship was working anymore. I haven't heard from her since, and I don't expect to. Her sister drove by the apartment yesterday when she came to get the last of her belongings, but I was at work, so I didn't have to deal with any awkward conversations or drama. So that's it. I'm single again, and I'm not planning any weddings anytime soon. But I'm keeping that prenup idea in my back pocket for next time, because this whole experience taught me that you truly can't be too careful when it comes to protecting yourself legally and financially.